Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Judy, a Christian physician and holistic wellness expert. And in this channel, we discuss all things holistic wellness. So basically, my P3 framework: plants, prayer, and peace. We discuss physical health, mental health, and spiritual health. And in today's episode, I'll be sharing powerful insights that you will want to take notes on about navigating life's challenges and trusting in God. In our fast paced, often busy and chaotic lives and world, finding inner peace seems like it's impossible. Everyone seems to think that it's normal to be stressed because how can you not be stressed with everything that's going on, right? But in this video, you will discover how Jesus set an excellent example for us for how we can cultivate inner peace even in the midst of life's storms and life's biggest challenges. My friends, inner peace is independent of your present circumstances. And I think that one goal for the believers should be to develop the level of faith and trust in God so that we can weather any storm with unshakable inner peace and a sense of calm, just like Jesus did in the boat during the storm. So let's get into the story. So the story is in Mark 4:35 to 41. And I don't know if you watched the Chosen series, but it's amazing. And there's one episode actually about this storm. It was so good. So Jesus and the disciples were in a boat crossing the Sea of Galilee. And a storm arose suddenly, and the disciples were very afraid. The winds were blowing, it was lightning and thundering. Rain was coming down so hard that the boat was starting to fill up with water. So if you can imagine, they were probably panicking, trying to use buckets to scoop the water out of the boat so that the boat wouldn't sink. And Mark 4:37 says, "And a great windstorm rose. The waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. But Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a pillow, and they awoke him and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' And then Jesus arose, he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And then Jesus said to the disciples, 'Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?' And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, 'Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" And for me, growing up in Bermuda, we experienced hurricanes. They actually had one recently that passed through. And in a hurricane, it is very difficult to go to sleep. Okay. It is windy, it's lightning and thundering, it's raining very heavy. The winds are blowing very, very fast. And so it's noisy. Sometimes things that are outside, like trees or branches or something that may be in the yard, like a bucket, may blow against the house. It might blow against the window. And so you're really concerned that something may break the window and then rain will start coming into your house and like flood your house. You're also worried about the roofs blowing off because in severe hurricanes in Bermuda, the roof can blow off. But the houses in Bermuda are built very differently than the houses in the US. They're built to withstand hurricanes. They have to be at a certain grade and level to withstand a certain speed of wind, is my understanding. So the houses are built different. So usually the house itself doesn't have much structural damage from hurricanes, but the roof can blow off in some cases. But fortunately, my house that we grew up in, I lived in two houses growing up. We moved once, so we lived in two different households, two different houses. My family and we never had any damage to our house. But I remember during the storm, it was very scary. It was difficult to sleep. So the thought of Jesus being asleep, not only during a storm, but also he's not in a house, right? He's in the middle of the ocean, which is even more scary or more risky because a boat has less protection from the elements. And I don't know if the boat was like modern day boats where it was covered and sealed and air conditioned. I doubt it. It probably was like just an open boat, right? So they were probably getting soaking wet and the boat was probably rocking back and forth. It probably was a small, cheap boat because they didn't have a lot of money, I don't think. So it was probably like a little basic boat. And I cannot imagine how he's managing to sleep in that environment. But when they awoke him, one of the lessons that I really want you to take note of is Jesus showed us how we can have peace in the midst of chaos. He slept peacefully despite the raging storm, and his peace came from his complete trust in God. He knew that God was not going to allow him to perish in that storm. He knew that that was not his time to die. He knew that he was going to later die on the cross. So he knew that his time to perish and die was not present yet. So that probably gave him some confidence. But also, I think the bigger picture is that he's setting an example for us for how we can navigate storms in life. We can cultivate inner peace through faith, regardless of our external circumstances. And too often, I think people allow their present circumstances, external circumstances to dictate how they feel. They dictate your emotions. You may become angry, irritated, frustrated when you see that things aren't working the way you think they should. So some modern day storms could be infertility, having a miscarriage, having a stressful marriage, and you're maybe at the brink of deciding whether you should get divorced. Or maybe you're single and you're praying for years to God to bring you your spouse. Or maybe you're studying for a program and trying to get into a degree program, and maybe you failed one of your exams, or maybe you have a business that you were trying to grow, and so far it has not reached the level that you want it to be. Or it could be the death of a family member. I think that's a storm too as well. And so when I think about storms, I think that life is guaranteed to give us storms. That's one thing we can all guarantee, that in this life there will be challenges. So I think it behooves us to find ways to cope better with challenges, with storms, because they are unavoidable. And God sent his son Jesus to this earth, and he did not have a life that was free of pain. He was rejected by the religious leaders. He was brutally murdered and killed on a cross. And he was not rich. He was almost like a nomad when him and the disciples were moving from place to place teaching. So Jesus experienced suffering when he was on this earth, and God did not spare his son suffering. So to expect that we won't have challenges, to expect that we won't have storms is unrealistic, and it's not biblical either. But throughout scripture, God gives us examples of how we can maintain inner peace in the midst of storm. So I want to share with you one scripture about that in Philippians 4:6 that says, "Be anxious about nothing, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." So that's the first point. Jesus showed us how we can have peace in the midst of chaos. And just to share a personal example of this, I never really thought that this was possible. I thought that people that believed this or acted this way were being unrealistic or not being genuine about the effects of the negative situation that they were going through, or the negative challenge that they were experiencing, right? I remember when COVID hit, I was already stressed out and frustrated with my profession. But then when the pandemic came in March 2020, I remember feeling so anxious and so stressed out. I was just frustrated because I already was frustrated with medicine. And then I felt like I was stuck in a job working in the hospital, feeling like I was going to battle every day, trying to fight this new virus that there was no treatment for, no diagnostic test for initially. And I remember being so stressed and so anxious. And back then, I used to think that that was acceptable, normal, and to be expected. And I remember someone one time said to me, you know, Christians should be the most calm people right now handling the COVID pandemic. We shouldn't be stressed out, anxious, and depressed with what's going on right now, because this is preparation for what's to come. And what they were referring to is the Bible speaks clearly about end time events and what's going to happen during end time events. And so they were saying that this is just a preparation, a warning, and that we should be able to maintain peace, calm in the midst of circumstances like this. We shouldn't be panicking and freaking out. And I remember back then, I was so annoyed that they even had the nerve to say that to me. That's how I felt at that time. I obviously don't feel that way now. And I remember thinking, what? How is someone supposed to be calm? It's a global pandemic. We could die. We're on social lockdown, social distancing. We've got to wear masks. We can't fly and travel. And at that time, the airport was closed in Bermuda, so I couldn't even fly home. It was closed for a few months. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's so funny how God can take you through an experience where you completely change your mind, your perspective on that. But fast forward a couple of years later, last fall, when I had a experience whereby I had a medical illness that popped up out of nowhere with no warning, and it was a medical mystery basically. And in that period, my symptoms had gotten so bad that I had to take a leave of absence. It was not even optional. I didn't want to, but my body said no. So I took 3-4 months off work. And in that time, God literally poured into me. It was just unbelievable. And basically, I remember being so angry, so frustrated, because at that time I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go back to work, look at the computer screen, work as a doctor, what I was going to do, or if I would ever heal or get better at all. And one day, literally, God just spoke to me and reassured me that He is in control, even though it may not feel like it. He is still on the throne. He is still in control. And He gifted me with His peace. It was sudden. It was immediate. And I just remember feeling a blanket of peace wrap around me. And I've never felt that before. And from that day onward, I never worried about whether I would heal. I never worried about whether I would be able to look at the computer again, because at that time my eyes were burning with the lights and the screens. Like when you cut an onion, it was burning like that. From that day forward, I never worried about that. I completely trusted God. And I said, even if you don't heal me, even if I am still in this state right now, next year, 2 years from now, I trust that this is for a bigger purpose and that you will be glorified through this experience. And to me, that was a complete transformation, because prior to that, most of my life, I had never operated from that mindset. I used to be the kind of person that when situations happen, I would feel tension. I would feel anxious, like my heart racing. And sometimes, because I guess sometimes when you're used to things going wrong, so to speak, you can sort of anticipate, right? So you always are trying to be 3 steps ahead and have plan B, C, D in case things don't work out. But ever since that day, I stopped operating like that. I completely trusted God to the point where I don't even need to know the plan. I just need to know, what does God want me to do today, right now, in this season? And I trust that when it's time for me to take the next step, that He will show me what that step is. And for me, that was very powerful. And also in that same day when I was on that medical leave with symptoms that are basically similar to chronic fatigue syndrome, He said, okay, now that I've showed you how you can have inner peace in the midst of your storm and uncertainty and illness, this is the message that I want you to share with people. P3, plants, prayer, and peace. Prior to that, I had only been talking about plant-based nutrition, but He said it's time to pivot and switch slightly to talk about P3, plants, prayer, and peace. Now I want you to share with people. This is what I felt God impressed upon me. He said, now it's time for you to share with people how I gave you inner peace when everything was uncertain and you felt alone. And I want you to tell them how this is possible. And so that's what I've been doing. Once I recovered, I ended up not going back to work. I was working at that time and had taken that leave, and I, in obedience, did not go back to work and instead focused on my company, my business, and growing that. And so that's what I'm doing now. And so I really do believe that this is super important, because I do think that we are in the last days. And I do think that things are going to get progressively worse as far as challenges, problems, natural disasters, wars, crime, division. I think it's going to get worse. And one way that we can cultivate calm and inner peace is by spending more time with God. It's very difficult to truly trust God if you don't spend time with Him. If you only go to church on the weekends and during the week you're barely spending 5 minutes in worship and prayer, it's not enough. So I challenge you to spend more time with God in prayer. I would say ideally at least 15 minutes, but really 30 minutes a day minimum. And over time, when you ask God to give you His inner peace, to give you that joy, over time, your stress levels will go down, your anxiety levels will go down, your resilience will go up, your ability to weather storms will increase. It's powerful and it's truly life-changing, truly life-changing. Okay, so that's the first lesson from this story. The second lesson is the power of faith over fear. Now, that is actually like a phrase that people put on t-shirts, right? I'm sure you've seen it. So the disciples' fear contrasted with Jesus' faith. Jesus had faith in the Father. He had faith in God, that all things work together for good. And Jesus, I think, was very disappointed in the disciples. I think He's very disappointed in us as well when we lack faith. One thing that I've seen a consistent pattern of in the Bible is that Jesus rewards faith. And strong faith can help us remain calm, not worry when things don't look like they're working out with our human limited vision, our limited eyes. An example, let's say that you are dealing with a health challenge, right? The doctors maybe don't know the diagnosis, or maybe they don't know the treatment. Maybe they've tried some treatments and one worked and then one didn't. And so maybe you're having a relapse. Right. And it can be easy to be fearful. Oh, what if I get sicker? What if I have to have surgery? What if I die from this illness? But faith over fear means that you have faith that all things work together for good for them that love God. And so to me, that means that not that our problems will be taken away, not that we will always be healed, not that our problems will always be solved or resolved in the way that we want. But even if they don't, I will still glorify God. Even if they don't, I will still trust God, because I know that His ways are higher than my ways. His purposes are higher than my purposes. And He sees the bigger picture. We can only see through a small peephole, whereas God sees the entire picture. He sees from before we were born, He sees our present, and He sees the future. And so when you exercise blind faith and trust in God, it allows you to not look at your present circumstances as though that's final. But you're looking at the bigger picture and you trust God who is in control, that no matter how things work out in this storm, I trust that God is still in control, that all things work together for good, and I will continue to trust him. That's what that means. And you cannot have faith and fear together. Faith and worry do not go together. If you are worrying, that means that you are lacking faith. It means that you're lacking faith and trust in God, in his sovereignty, in his all-knowing, and in his plans, and even sometimes in his will. Sometimes we want our own will to be done instead of trusting and surrendering our will to God's will. So if you find yourself worrying a lot about a situation, spend some time reflecting on, do you really trust God? Or do you feel like you have to come up with the solution, control the situation, and know how everything is going to work out? That's deep. That's powerful. People often say, oh, I trust God, I have faith. But then when it really comes down to it, they may not actually really trust God. And I've been there. And like I shared with you, my experience last year showed me a whole new level of trust and faith in God, that even if he did not heal me, I was still okay with it. And my prayer to him was just, as long as you heal me enough, just a little bit, so that I can do something productive, I'm fine with it. And I would do whatever you tell me to do. And that's basically what happened. So the third point that I want to share about this story is Jesus spoke to the winds and waves and told them to be still. So Jesus has authority over nature and our circumstances. Jesus commanded the winds and the waves, demonstrating his divine power. God has ultimate control over our life's situations. And sometimes people may ask, well, if God is in control and he has power and authority over nature and circumstances, why does he allow storms to occur? Why does he allow bad things to occur? I do have a separate video about that. Why do bad things happen to good people? But briefly, I want to share that one reason why you may not think that God exercises his authority is because I think Christians don't really understand the authority that he has given us as believers, as his children in the earth. And one way that God has given us authority is through the power of prayer. And when we pray, we should always pray in alignment with God's will. But God has given us the authority in the earth to intercede on the behalf of our brothers and sisters, to intercede and ask God and to come to him with our requests and our struggles. And so we're just not praying enough, I believe. I believe that Christians, we are just not praying enough. We say a morning prayer, grace with meals, and a little quick bedtime prayer, and that's all. But did you know that in the Bible, Jesus many times woke up early before the sun got up and went away from the disciples by himself to pray for hours? And if Jesus did that, who's the Son of God, how much more do we think that we should be praying? We give the best of our day to our employer. We spend 8 hours, 12 hours a day, working 40 to 80 hours a week. But the time that we spend in prayer is probably an hour a week. Maybe, right? So under point number 3, regards to Jesus' authority, remember that God has also given us authority. He gives people choices, and sometimes wicked people exercise their choice to commit evil and sin, to commit murder, to do things that are evil. But we also have the authority to pray against the wickedness, to pray against Satan and his people that are in the earth that are doing wickedness. And if we would get together in prayer more, we would see more people coming to God, I believe, and then we would see some of these circumstances actually changing. So that's the third point. All right. We can definitely trust God to intervene in our most difficult circumstances, but we have to remember that prayer is a tool that we need to use to intervene. And then also sometimes God is taking us through a process. So it's not about just praying for an answer and waiting for God to intervene and just snap his finger. Sometimes he's actually waiting for a process. He wants to take us through a process. So that's the third point, that God is still in control. And I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how dire your situation is right now. I do not care how your situation looks right now. Do not allow the enemy to sow seeds of doubt in your mind. God is still in control. And just remember that he knows everything. We know very little. The fourth point is the importance of trusting God during difficult times. Now, I've talked about trust and faith kind of together, but I just want to put this separate, that the disciples had Jesus in the boat and they still panicked. Can you imagine? Like, they saw him laying there. I don't even know why they were so panicked. Like, did he really think that God was going to let them all die in the boat when Jesus was right there? It's just so bizarre to me. And it's the same way with us. How many times has God brought you through a circumstance? Has God brought you through a situation? and you came out on the other side stronger, better, character development. And then you go through the next challenge and you forgot how God used that experience for his glory. So it's really important to trust God during these difficult times, even if it's difficult. And you can actually pray and ask God to help you to trust him more. But the more that you trust him with the small things, you'll find that your trust in him will increase to the point where no matter what happens to you, you are fully confident that it is going to work out for your good. It's going to work out for the glory of God, and or that God's will and his purposes will be accomplished in the earth. And that's really where I am now. And I really want that for you, because the inner peace that I feel right now is completely different than how I used to be a couple of years ago. And to give you an example of a storm, so I talked about my health challenge last fall, and I've recovered from that. And one situation that I want to share is that I don't know if you have people in your life that are difficult. Maybe it's a coworker, it could be a family member, it could be someone who has mental health challenges, maybe they're toxic, rude, negative, right? And interacting with this person is frustrating for you. So there's someone in my life that I don't have any control over, whether they're in my life or not. There's actually two people like this in my life, right? They're in my life. I can't remove them because they're not friends. You get my drift, right? You can walk away from friends, but family, you cannot. So anyway, so years ago, my previous operation, I would feel frustrated when interacting with these individuals. Whereas now that God's peace and his joy is in me, it doesn't matter what they say to me, what insults they hurl my way, what things they do to me to try and destroy me. I don't feel there's feelings of anxiety or, like tension building up when I'm interacting with them. I just feel calm and inner peace, and to the point where I don't even need to talk about it. It's like I had a phone conversation with one of these persons and it went the usual way. After the conversation, I prayed for that person. I have compassion for that person. And then I moved on with my day. I didn't even feel the need to call anybody and complain or vent about it or anything. It was like, okay, So I'm sharing this because from someone who was a different way before, but who now is a lot more peaceful, a lot calm. This is a skill that we need to practice developing now, because things are going to get worse towards the end times. We're already in the end times, but it's going to get worse as we get closer to Christ's second coming. So we need to use this time to improve our resiliency, increase our tolerance to discomfort, I think. And one way that I increase my tolerance to discomfort is through fasting. And speaking of fasting, I actually offer two amazing programs. One is a 3-day fast. It's called the P3 fast. And the second one is a 21-day plant-based prayer challenge that involves eating plant-based. Both programs are centered around my P3 framework, plants, prayer, and peace. And they both have recipes, meal plans, delicious, amazing vegan, whole food, plant-based recipes that are kind of Caribbean, African influenced. And then they both have a workbook and they both have a journal. The journal is so amazing. It's a PDF journal that you can print out. It's like beautiful and it's just so amazing. These programs are offered several times during the year, and currently we're actually doing a 21-day one, but I'm planning to launch it again after this. So go to my website, theplantbasedempty.com, subscribe to my email list so that you'll be the first to know when my next program launches. And in the program, I teach stress reduction strategies from a Christian and faith-based framework. I don't believe in doing yoga or the other new age stress reduction strategies, but I've discovered that there are some Christian ones that we can do. There's some apps, some Christian meditation apps that I love. They're so good and so relaxing. So I share that with my community in my programs. It's just truly amazing. So get on my email list so that you'll know when the next program launches. All right. So the last point is point number 5, and it is the development of character through trials. I firmly believe and know and experience that sometimes we need to go through a challenge so that we can rely on God and so that our character can be developed. There's a passage in the Bible, I think it says, when I think of the story of Job, and in Job 23:10, it says, "But he knoweth the way I take. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold." That means that the wilderness season is a period of time that can refine our character and we can come forth like gold. We can come forth from that experience with more faith, more trust, stronger character development, and a better person. And who doesn't want that? Our goal in this life is to become more like Christ and to spread the good news of the gospel to others, to the world, and to be an example for God's love. The story of Job is a really good story about challenges and navigating challenges and problems and situations. And so we must remember that Challenges, problems, situations, setbacks, whatever you want to call them, storms are opportunities to develop our character. And we must not be so quick to pray and ask God to miraculously take away the problem, the challenge that we're dealing with, because we miss an opportunity for our character to be developed. When I was dealing with the chronic fatigue syndrome, I had started dealing with that in 2021 after I got COVID. And had I been healed in 2021, 2022, I would not have had the revelation that I had last fall when things got severely ill. I would not have had that revelation. And so God was taking me through a process. So let that be an encouragement to you that no matter what you're going through right now, it could be a health challenge, it could be a rough patch in your marriage, it could be a broken family relationship or situation. God could be taking you through a process that is designed to bring you to a different place. I don't know what that is, but you have to pray and ask God to show you, and He will reveal it to you. Why is He allowing you to go through this experience? That's what I did. I prayed and asked God, and He showed me exactly why. He showed me what I needed to learn from it, and He showed me what I needed to do to heal and get out of that situation. So that's the fifth point that I just want to leave with you, that trials, storms come, and in many cases, there are opportunities for our character to be developed. So hopefully that was helpful. So basically what I'm saying is trials, storms will come. Just like every year, there's hurricane season and we just brace for it. If you live in the Caribbean and Bermuda, around September, October, we just brace and prepare for storms and hurricanes. I don't know if people pray that there's no hurricane that year. They might. But you prepare for it. And so when we take that approach that, you know what, storms are going to come, let me prepare. Let me focus on strengthening my mind, my mental health, my emotional health. Let me focus on strengthening my spiritual health, making sure that I am in tune and connected to the source, God, and making sure that I strengthen my physical health, my physical body, putting foods in my body that can nourish my body. All of these things together help us to be able to weather storms better. There are certain foods that increase anxiety. There are certain foods that you should not be eating if you don't want to be anxious and you don't want to be stressed. And on my website, I have a document, a PDF handout that outlines more about the P3 method, plants, prayer, peace, and it also has a bonus in there, a list of foods that can calm anxiety, calm the nerves, foods that you should eat more of if you want to induce more sense of inner calm, and foods to avoid if you want to reduce stress. So it covers foods to reduce anxiety. So go to my website and you can sign up for that. And everything matters. Our mind, body, and spirit matters. We cannot look at any of these areas in isolation. And so that's what I want to leave with you today. P3, plans, prayer, and peace. In today's video, I discuss peace. And over the next coming days, be sure to go to my website, put in your email there, and then you will get my freebie about the P3 method, as well as a bonus about foods that reduce anxiety. It's super amazing. You will never believe what foods are on there. You're probably thinking that some of the foods you're eating are not increasing stress or increasing anxiety. So it's a really great resource to tap into. So that's all for today's video. Please make sure that you like, subscribe. It really helps the channel to grow. The more subscribers, the more viewers that we get on our content. And be sure to share this video with someone. This can definitely change a life and help you to live your best life, to live the abundant life that God wants us to live. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.